And our program guest this morning, joining us here in the studio, is the Leader of the Opposition, Tony Abbott. But first we'll see what the papers are saying this Sunday, and page 1 of The Age in Melbourne has the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange saying that the Australian government has betrayed him, David Marr.
Yes, he has given the government an enormous spray for its lack of support, for being part of the US-led World Alliance to shut WikiLeaks down and to smear him. And I must say that the Attorney-General, Robert McClellan, seems to be saying some pretty extraordinary things at the moment, not only, just amazingly overblowing the danger of the leaks, but saying things like Mr Assange might not be welcome back in Australia. Now, there aren't international rules more basic than the fact that you can't keep your own nationals out of their country. But there's a huge amount of ugly rhetoric going on at the moment about the leaks, which are, meantime, fabulously entertaining and instructive. And the really bad news of the morning is that it may be as late as late January before we get to the Australian documents.
Well, let's hear just before you go on, Lenore, let's hear from the Attorney-General, Rob McClellan, and hear what he had to say about this.
What about the question about the passport? What's the Australian government's position?
There are both issues in respect to serving a notice of cancellation, but there are also issues as to whether it would be constructive or counterproductive to the law enforcement effort. Any Australian citizen has their rights as an Australian citizen, but that also includes the consequences for breaching any laws of another country. United States law enforcement authorities are looking very, very closely at the fact that United States laws may have been breached. I've stated that Australian Federal Police are looking at the issue as to whether any Australian laws might have been breached. We have indicated also that we would provide every assistance to United States law enforcement authorities.
Lenore?
Well, isn't the point that as of now they haven't found any law that has been breached, and they haven't charged him with breaching any law, and it would therefore seem kind of premature to be talking about cancelling his passport or not welcoming him back to his country of birth if he hasn't been charged with anything and his main crime seems to be embarrassing the US government. As I understand it, WikiLeaks does go through these documents and redact any that have got genuine national security implications, and that's as it should be. But the ones that come out, I can't see anything in them that does anything to endanger operatives in the field. If there's evidence of that, the government should provide that evidence before they start talking about cancelling someone's passport.
I think David's point is interesting, waiting for the Australian flood to come out. Now, just in preparation for this, if we would just think of someone who was in the area of diplomacy and foreign affairs, who liked talking a lot about other people and himself, I wonder... I can't think of anyone, but...
He was the Prime Minister for a while.
It could have been him.
Yes,
could have been him.
Yes.
I wonder if Kevin Rudd is going to feature in Mr Assange's...
Imagine American reports of Rudd's gossip to American ambassadors. Fantastic.
Well, it does. It looks as if they're trying to build a case against Assange, which is difficult in itself, you'd think. But the original leaker is the one that you think might be in trouble if they can ever identify that person. In big trouble if people like Bill O'Reilly and Mike Huckabee get their way. Here they are.
Whoever leaked all those State Department documents to the WikiLeaks website is a traitor and should be executed or put in prison for life.
Whoever in our government leaked that information is guilty of treason. And I think anything less than execution is too kind a penalty.
He was a presidential candidate.
I mean, were those men around at the time of the Vietnam Papers? I mean, that is exactly what was said about Pentagon Papers. That's exactly what was said about Daniel Ellsberg. He's a traitor, he should be shot, he should be put in prison for life.
Manning has been charged. Someone has been charged for the leaks.
Yes.
And I'm assuming the legal processes will go through him. And he's the person against whom there is a charge to be made, but not against the messenger.
The US Supreme Court said Ellsberg was just fine doing what he did. And, of course, the guy who actually downloaded this stuff, I mean... The way in which he got around US security has to be noted. I mean, he sat there in Afghanistan, lovelorn, because an affair he'd had with a drag queen had fallen through, lovelorn, pretending to lip-sync to a Lady Gaga CD, which he'd actually wiped. And he was downloading this stuff onto his Lady Gaga CC, but sitting there pretending to be singing along. and then he just slipped it into his I was going to say purse, and left the base. And that's how we know all these fabulous things.
A love affair with a Drake, further grounds for execution.
And Hillary Clinton, of course, has laughed the whole thing off, saying, well, this is just kind of, diplomacy, but a little more candid than normal. But then, of course, there were these comments about the British troops and that they lacked a ticker. So I think that gets a little more difficult now for the Americans to explain.
But Bob Gates, the Defence Secretary, said this week, look, this stuff's embarrassing, but it's not going to have much impact on how the United States actually does what it does around the world. Yep.